Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Future of BizTech. I am your host, JC Granger, as always, and I have the pleasure of having Kimber Spradlin here, who is the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Graylog. Kimber, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what is it that Graylog does?
Yeah, so appreciate the invite. Really enjoy being here and welcome to the audience. I have been in the cybersecurity industry since the heydays of the late 90s to early 2000s, and just love this segment. Love working with everybody in this area. I started out as a practitioner myself and got seduced over to the dark side and have been in vendor side of things since about 2001.
So, what brought you to Graylog specifically, right? Because, I mean, so you're the CMO. Were you one of the founding members of the company? Did you come on more recently? Kind of what got you sucked into Graylog's orbit?
Yeah, Graylog has a really interesting history. It started as an open source project way back in 2009. I did not join the company until 2019. So it existed for quite a while, but it was most of that lifespan was as an open source company. And then as we began to develop commercial offerings and wanting to bring that commercial side of the house in order to fund the open source and pay for all of those developers that were building on the open source, that is when they began to bring in marketing. Like most, I think at my level, really it came through networking and through previous connections of people that I had worked with before that were at Graylog, gave my name to the founder and the CEO at the time. And we just began really interesting conversations. And I had never tackled an open source, open core product line before. So I thought it would be really fascinating to jump in.
So, tell not everyone who listens understands the intricacies. So, tell us a little bit about the difference of open source versus not essential. Like, what makes that so special within your industry of what you're doing?
Yeah, so open source is when the company shares its core source code. That means that under certain license conditions and terms, if you want to be really nitpicky, ours are now SSPL. The open source community will know what that means. That you can go grab the source code. You can do something called fork the source code, and then you can make your own changes and adaptations. So you can take Graylog and turn it into something else if you wanted to off of the open source product. It comes with all sorts of interesting marketing and business consequences because, for example, again, I've been here almost 7 years now. The idea of gating a white paper, asking somebody for an email address in order to download a piece of content, when they could go to straight to GitHub and get my source code, the most valuable thing a software company makes, without ever visiting my website. And so that just puts a whole different approach to marketing.
That's a really good segue into this because I am curious, how do you market a company that gives it away? I guess, do you guys get any kind of licensing from it? I know it's open source, but does that mean you're completely out of the loop? I guess, like, what's the benefit to your company other
Yeah.
than maybe the altruism of trying to make cybersecurity better for everyone? That I get. But is there a business reason to do it that way versus not?
There are strong business reasons to do it that way. The Linux Foundation, Linux started, as open source and built their business off of, providing services and support on top of that. That model really has not worked, honestly, for anybody other than Linux and Red Hat since then. So what I tend to think of are open source, and again, I came in well after the product was established and the community was built, as brand ambassadors. So I have an army we have at any given time 50, 60,000 active installations of our open product. If you think over, the 16 years that the product has been active, we're talking millions of people that have at some point logged in and used Graylog. And so if I can deliver to them a valuable and enjoyable analyst experience, then they go out and say really good things through social media, through personal and private references. They might bring it into their job when they have an opportunity to make a decision or a choice. And then I work very closely with our product team to make sure that when a customer is ready for that next level, that enterprise level, they have a more sophisticated or complex need, they have multiple teams that are using this log data, or they need a full SIM, not just a log, centralized log management platform, that we're there for them.
That's great. And then, so then, do you give away all of it in open source, or is it kind of like, hey, here's the base foundation, and then Graylog has their own that they built on top, which becomes their service? Is that how you kind of separate the two a little bit?
Yeah, we call that an open core model. So you have a code base that has all the open source code that anybody can go look at and read at any time. And then we add value add commercial features on top of that. So with a license key, you can unlock our enterprise features, which are really oriented towards IT operations, DevOps, cloud
Mhm.
ops, those kinds of folks who are really focused on the logs themselves. Or with a different license key, you can unlock Graylog Security, which is a full-fledged SIM, competes with the likes of Elastic and Splunk, who everybody has heard of, Exabeam with their acquisition of Logarithm. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's a really good idea for branding then, right? Because like you said, there's an authority built into the concept of allowing a quality core be a an open source network, right? Like you
It
said, because then the
it
people have already
in
kind of used to working with it.
Yeah, it enables me to be really efficient with my marketing budget. So I can achieve something that companies of our size, in terms of brand awareness and brand recognition, wouldn't normally be able to achieve.
Well, let's talk about that. What is your size? Are you guys, I mean, 10 million, 20 million? Are you guys allowed to give away those figures? I'm always trying to kind of get an idea of scale of the guest.
Yeah, we're still sub 50 million. I'll give you that much.
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay, so we're in that range. We can do that.
And in the sim market, that's pretty small. The sim market has about 40 players, new entrants all the time as people come in from adjacent markets and try and build up into the security space. And so,
Mhm.
that makes us a pretty small player in a very big ocean.
So, look, this is actually an interesting point I want to bring up right now, given the current state of affairs. When we have a lot of tariff things going on right now, I'm not going to take a side on position on it as much as I want to know when it comes to the physical part of this, like the chips, right? At some point, there's server rooms. At some point, I mean, cloud is hosted somewhere. Is there any way that you or the industry in specifically, you said there's only about 40 players on the sim side, um, is this is anyone freaking out, or is it like, no, it's gonna be fine, or we have no idea what's happening, or what are the long-term and short-term effects of just all this back and forth that's going on with tariffs in the technology industry?
Yeah, so there's a couple of industry-wide advantages. There are not yet tariffs on the software side of the house, so we're
Yeah.
not impacted directly yet on our pricing, and to our customers. Unique to Graylog, we were founded in Hamburg, Germany, and our revenue is very balanced globally, and so we are able to do business in lots of different locations. Again, our open source heritage. We have instances running in over 180 countries. So that gives us a very global perspective that you wouldn't normally find in an organization of our size. The other big advantage we have is I think we are the last SIM and log management player left that treats our cloud product and our self-managed or on-prem product the same. It is the same code base for us. It's the same functionality. It's the same roadmap. We are not in the business of pushing our customers to adopt cloud because it generates higher top line revenue. We really let the customers decide what's best for them. Now, on the flip side of that, that does push that cost equation. If they're doing self-managed, then they're out buying that hardware. And so, depending on where in the world our customers are located, that could begin to have an impact. It hasn't yet. A lot of this is very new. There was inventory in place, but expect in the next month or two for some of that inventory to come down. The
Okay.
other, I think, really interesting angle about this is, set the tariffs aside. Our industry is driving hard to introduce AI into the products themselves, as well as AI into the organizational practices and all over the place. As we all know, AI is pretty expensive compute. And depending on how that's implemented and where those costs have to be borne, that can make those AI capabilities cost prohibitive for an organization, either on the vendor side or the customer side. So there's a lot of really interesting unknowns coming our way in the next 12 months.
Yeah, that's I was talking to someone else about this because you're right, the AI side, the compute, the pure weight of it all, essentially, and then how much energy, how much money it takes to get it going, which is also why like the whole DeepSeek thing was really interesting when that
Right.
hit because I mean it was kind of a yeah no duh situation in my opinion. Everyone said anytime someone says no, app there's no way to do it easier or better or faster. I go, okay, until there is, right? I'm like, but is there though? Isn't there though? And I get
Yeah.
if there's no motivation, sure, but I'm glad the DeepSeek thing hit because what I pictured is, kind of like these kids in a basement that figured out how to be scrappy with
Hmm.
with the old stuff. They said, well, can we, what if we could do this? Can we get it to run like that? And I guess my point is like knowing that that is out there, does that change your mind a little bit about how much it's going to take moving forward? Like, do you think that with DeepSeek coming out and them being more efficient with the physical hardware to be able to run this AI, do you think that's something that's going to spread, or do you think everyone's just going to hold to their guns and keep the status quo?
I think it will have to spread. So, if you're a software company embedding AI into your product, you have two basic choices. One is to build in a local model, which may inhibit the performance, the number of input parameters and context windows that it can handle. Um, there are privacy and security reasons that make that a better choice for the customers. Um, that it is very much walled off and only contains their data. There are, however, advantages to your product kind of exiting that walled garden and talking to a more centralized log management or LLM, through its API. Using what's already built out there. Lots of things are kind of skinning or even iframing OpenAI capabilities. And so all of those impact your cost trade-offs because who's buying those NVIDIA chips, right?
Yeah.
Is it the big providers? Are you accessing it through Google, through OpenAI, through Microsoft, or are you asking the customer to bear that burden and supply the hardware to run those models? At which point you're probably scaling down the model.
Hmm.
They get the privacy increases and impacts, but then they don't get all the benefits of the shared training data. So there are a lot of trade-offs. I don't think there's any definitive answers at this point, but it is in all of the big providers' interests to figure out how to cost contain because they've done the drug model. They've given all of us our very cheap or free hits. We've all gotten addicted to our LLMs now.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that I use more of my ChatGPT account than what I pay for, since I'm in it almost every day. So they're going to have to bring their costs down, and they're
Hmm.
probably going to have to raise cost on the customer side as well to find that balance. You can't
Yeah.
keep running those kind of deficits forever.
Yeah, that's too, and there's other impacts too, right? I mean, there's ecological impacts too. I mean, the domino effect goes on forever. Um, the analogy I kind of bring up is when you think about like cars in Cuba, right? Like they got embargoed, so there was like nothing new. So it created this industry of insanely scrappy people that like they could take anything they already had laying around and they could fix a car with it to keep it going because they weren't getting new parts. They couldn't
Yeah.
import new cars, right? And it's like if you go down there, it's like this weird time warp going back to the 1950s. There's classic cars everywhere and they run.
And
And
they
it's
run.
because they didn't have a choice, right? And so, that DeepSeek thing, coming in, I'm hoping that is something that spreads the way that we want it to, so that can start lessening the cost and just the environmental impact load and a lot of things for everyone.
And
Um,
conceptually, what they did wasn't that complicated, isn't that hard to replicate. So,
that's almost worse. It's like, no, like that's great, but also like, what the hell, right? Like,
Why didn't we do this from the beginning?
yeah, well, I mean, yeah. Well, it happened, so let's, we'll parlay it into our ecosystem here.
Yeah.
So other than, listen, I mean, you're one of 40 players in the sim side of things, right? You got open source. Those are two great bullet points for you guys. Is there anything else that about Graylog that you think makes you more competitive in a highly competitive industry?
Highly competitive and very mature. So
Yeah.
that is simultaneously very fascinating as a marketer to work in that kind of industry. And that at the same time can be a little boring. It's not the same as being a category creator, right?
Mhm.
But there are some very unique challenges to operating in this industry. One of the things is I have to work very closely with our product and engineering team. There is no just out marketing my competitors. I have to have true core unique differentiators that are built into the product. Thankfully, I have an architecture that has been tested by those millions of Graylog users and open source users who've told us all about the bugs they found for 16 years. So I've got a really, really great core architecture to work with. And so the quality of the product is really high. Lately, what we have been doing to introduce unique capabilities is there's something that's been happening in our industry about front loading the data. So if you know anything about the SIM industry, and if you've ever heard the name Splunk, usually the next thing that comes out of somebody's mouth is, "Ooh, that's a lot of money.
Mm.
How can you afford it?" And so vendors have come along to start to front end the data that is flowing into Splunk and choking it off so that only truly necessary data flows in, thus reducing the Splunk license. We took a step back. We were in an enviable position of being smaller in this case and said, hey, that's really close to what we already can do. So with a few small tweaks, we could build that functionality in, save our customers money, and they wouldn't have to go buy a third-party solution to put in front of our data flow and our data streams and start to work with these data lakes that organizations are putting in place. Specifically, we target a bit more of a mid-enterprise that is less likely to have a sophisticated data lake system installed in their environment and is less likely to want to run multiple tools just simply to manage the budget of bringing
Yeah.
that data in-house. So that's an area we've been really focused on is helping customers balance their budget. The security industry last year, I think for the first time I have seen since 1997, had flat to diminishing budgets. We've been in a lovely, lovely segment for a very long run where we could kind of charge whatever we wanted. And because security was so critical, prices just kept going up. And now we're definitely entering a more realistic mindset and marketplace. And we have to balance what our customers spend with us against what they spend in completely unrelated but entirely necessary security tools so that they can provide comprehensive security to the organization. So that's something that we're really proud of bringing to market for our customers. Um,
Yeah, I have heard that is a little bit of a bear market right now
yeah.
in the cybersecurity industry and IT a lot in general, to be honest.
Mhm.
2022 being the heyday, and then 23 is a little harder, and 24 is like, okay, what? And 25 is like, all right, this is getting interesting. Or, how do we compete? But let's talk about that then. So how are you competing? I mean, I know that you spend a lot of time, you said, like, with development and the coders and whatnot, so you can really
Mm.
understand product. But what avenues do you like? What are your favorite avenues that you use for the marketing side, right? Is there something you're not doing that you want to be doing, or is there? I mean, you're doing podcasts, so, all right, PR check, right? What else you got?
Yeah, it's been because I've been here almost 7 years, and the organization was quite small on a revenue basis when I started. As a personal journey, this has just been wonderful because every year I'm able, it's like a whole new job because every year the company gets a bit bigger and I can introduce new layers to the marketing cake. So when I first started, it was all about SEO and content and what could we do for free, right? And then, eventually I was granted some budget and I could introduce the paid side of the house, the demand gen, the lead nerd, et cetera. We're now in an era, I don't know if I think all of my fellow marketers are feeling this. It feels like almost nothing is working because as soon as a marketer does something successful, the rest of us all jump in and
Not
now
right.
it stops working. So in my
Yeah.
world, email is dead. I've just declared to my team, email is dead. I don't worry a lot about any kind of email nurture. Also, I'm dealing with an average sales price that is, on the higher end. This is not a consumer level product. This is not put your credit card in kind of product. There's a
Mm,
lot of decision makers. There's a lot of members of the buying committee. So that's kind of some of the things that I think about. This year, past year, we introduced account-based selling and account-based marketing with
mm,
highly targeted advertising. So I'm now blending my paid side with my brand building side. And I'm really thinking about not building brand awareness to the entire market, but building brand awareness to people who are in the market for log management or SIM and fit my ICP, my ideal customer profile. Not just focusing on them from a lead perspective, but trying to capture them earlier in the buyer's journey. And that enables me to take a more limited budget because I would hazard a guess that Splunk's budget is larger than our total corporate revenues. I'm never going to keep up with that. I can make that budget work a lot harder for me by not trying to educate the entire world at all company sizes about Graylog. So that's been my newest play. Definitely SEO, social, podcasts. PR is having a renaissance. I know, press we've heard a lot about cutbacks at press and whether or not the press is, still there. But in many ways, my PR team is one of the most valuable components of what I do to get my story out.
yeah, I've always, it's kind of like the real estate industry. Like I think it's gonna shrink, but it'll hit like this sweet spot. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, there's certain industries that got way over bloated, right? And
Right.
PR was one of them. It was. And I think the only problem too is you get some industries where the barrier to entry is so low that once the times are good, everyone jumps on. And without trying to be mean, a majority of them don't belong there. They were just along for the ride and anyone could have made money doing it. But then when things get hard, everything contracts. And then what you have left is the people who actually should be there, right? So I think that's kind of
Yeah.
what's happening in the PR, the press world. It was like, well, at a certain point, anyone could just start some website and say, well, we're press now,
Yep. Right.
Yeah, like, okay, cool, great. I mean, listen, you're a CMO. I think you've seen the massive entrance into the quote fractional CMO space. And now
Yes.
so you get somebody who was a marketing director for 5 years and they think they could be a fractional CMO. It's like if you can't be a regular CMO, you can't be a fractional
Right.
CMO. Like
You
let's
should
just
only be
oh,
a fractional CMO after a good 10 years in
I
seat
mean,
as a
minimum,
CMO.
minimum. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got 25 years, and like so, I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do that, but I'm not going to. I like what I do. But so again, I'm kind of glad that it shrunk down and hit its core. And I think maybe, listen, here's the thing, that might happen in cybersecurity. It kind of already
Yeah.
started, right? I don't think that was a low barrier to entry at all, right? I think though what happened is as it got bigger people started splitting off and starting their own smaller ones,
It,
and it just kind of watered down the market. But now that it's getting harder, like this might be that whole darkest before the dawn kind of thing for you, right? I think maybe like 2026, I think we'll start seeing the light and peeking through the clouds a little bit there because I think this year is like who's gonna make it, like who's really got their foundation down. And what I like about you guys is that you have multiple things that will keep you easily in the industry and weather this kind of competitive storm.
yeah. Cybersecurity may have been, it's not a low barrier to entry, I agree, but I do think it was an overfunded segment because it had
Mm,
outsized returns for so long,
yeah.
that all of the capital that flowed in to the industry funded a lot of companies, to degrees that were in excess. Too many companies overfunded. And I think you're right. We will start to see the number of companies surviving in cybersecurity begin to decrease over the
Yeah.
next
It's a
probably
culling of the
5 years.
herd. I mean,
Yeah,
it's hard to watch, but it is necessary, right?
yeah.
And if you got a solid foundation, you guys will be fine. But with that being said, let me ask you this. Knowing how things are now, like what kind of like 12-month goals do you guys have as far as, I mean, is there a certain increase in revenue you're trying to do or market share or new technology? Like what's the future hold for you guys and where do you want to be if we were to talk exactly this day 12 months from now? That's what we'll do.
Yeah, so
We're gonna put in the calendar. We're gonna do another podcast. You're gonna book a year out, and we're gonna know exactly from April 17th of 2026. What did you do?
what did we do? Yeah. I mean, we've gone from, again, when I started, you saw 200% growth rates in industry segments, 400, 800. I mean, there were just crazy levels of growth rates. Now, that's because the industry was quite small, so smaller numbers are easier to grow. But now we have a lot of very mature segments. The sim segment is growing roughly 10% year over year, right? That is not a huge, hugely attractive growth rate. So our goal is to outgrow our market segment by 3 to 5x, which
Okay.
is an ambitious goal to be
Yeah,
sure.
that's yeah
Uh,
for 12. Okay. All right. I love the ambition. I like
and
it. It's
it means,
aggressive.
yeah, it means that we have to take market share to accomplish that. That won't be the only component of it. We will, have the greenfield, the first timers into SIM and centralized log management, but we will have to find a way to take market share.
What about
Lucky
acquisitions? Is that an option? Is M&A an option for that path?
M&A is always an option. You're definitely seeing more platform plays. For those of us who've been in this industry for a long time, there's always a pendulum swing between independent best of breeds into conglomerated platforms. And right now we're in the swing into more conglomerated platforms where I go get everything from Microsoft or everything from CrowdStrike or everything from Google. And so you're definitely seeing consolidation and the need for security vendors to be able to offer their customers more than one solution in a segment. So that is always something you have your eye on for the survival of the business and the growth of the business and providing returns to our investors.
Perfect. So let's before we wrap up here, I always like to ask what kind of advice that you have for colleagues at your level in
Mm-hmm.
your industry, right? So I mean, like from the point of view of as either as a CMO, I mean, listen, you're in a tight spot, right? This you got to be really good because, like you said, you're kind of behind the eight ball, but you are lucky enough to be at a company that can actually push through the storm. But you've got to get creative, right? What advice would you give to other either marketing professionals or even just C-level execs in cybersecurity or the IT industry in general right now?
Yeah, there's two big things. One is for everybody, AI. You've got to understand it. You've got to know its limitations. You've got to know its capabilities. You've got to appreciate how rapidly it is changing. So do not let your opinion get fixed, because go back and look a month later, and what it's capable of will be drastically different. That is impacting every aspect of the business, software development, marketing. For marketing, it's not just how we use AI to speed up the creation of internal and external content and messages, testing messages. It is also how we're impacted by our messages showing up inside of the LLMs. There is a lot of data now about how something 57% of all Google searches now result in no click, meaning the searcher got the answer they wanted right then and there, and they did not
Yeah.
click on a single link.
Yeah.
So you
SEO took
have
a dive.
yes. So you
Yeah.
have to understand how your company is being discussed inside of those LLMs and how it's being presented. There also is evidence that the trust factor of the answers provided by an LLM is really high because
Yeah.
not everybody appreciates all the hallucination and the positivity bias of these models. So I'm not saying it's a warranted position. I'm just saying the reality is the trust factor is very high. So
Sure.
everybody in the organization, your CTO, your CEO, your CFO, has got to understand the impact of AI in what they do for a living, as well as how it's going to impact their business and their product. Now, that's the business as a whole. Now I'm going to speak just to my marketers, my fellow CMOs, any of my colleagues in our CMO Coffee Talk group will know where this came from. Shout out to the group because it's an amazing community. Um, be a chief market officer. You own the market, not the marketing
Hmm.
for your organization. You represent the buyer, the customer in aggregate, not the individual deals. You are should know upside down, left, right, diagonal, everything that's happening from a business perspective with the markets you participate in. That you have to be that kind of value add, and if you're at an organization with a C-suite and a board that does not appreciate that and just wants you to be the department of pretty things, you need to go find a new position.
Department of Pretty. I like that. I've never heard that, but I'm like, that just, I almost feel attacked. That I've been doing
Seen,
this
you
so
should
long
feel
that I'm like,
seen, not
oh,
attacked.
there it is. There. I don't, why am I getting so defensive about this term? I don't understand. Well, listen, it was great to have you on. Where can people find you personally, Kimber? Because I mean, here's the thing. You're trying to get that market share. You never know who's listening, right? If they want to reach out to you directly, how do they find you? And then how do they find Graylog if they're trying to do some general research?
Yeah, so Graylog's pretty easy, graylog.com. And it's pretty easy to find me as well because there are not a lot of Kimbers in this world. That is my full and given name. And as far as I know, I have never found another Kimber Spradlin. So if you just go out to LinkedIn and or Google and look for Kimber Spradlin, Spradlin, you will definitely find me.
Perfect. And listen, everybody listening right now, thank you again for listening to the Future of BizTech. And listen, give it a 5-star rating if you liked it. If you didn't like it, give it a 5-star rating anyway. I don't care. As long as you do that, then we're okay. And then listen, share it around too, because there's not a whole lot of fun tech podcasts out there. And nerds like us, we got to have a place to go and listen, right? In the shower, in the car, wherever. So, Kimber, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll talk soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye bye.